You're in the most important meeting of your year.
Everyone is quiet. It's your turn to speak. You open your mouth, and instead of the sentence you rehearsed, your body makes a small, absurd, involuntary sound. Hic. You freeze. You try to hold it. Hic. There is nothing you can do. The most sophisticated brain on the planet, capable of language and mathematics and building rockets, has just been completely overruled. By a spasm it did not order, cannot stop, and has no use for whatsoever. That's the thing about the hiccup that nobody stops to notice. Almost everything your body does is for something. You breathe to live. You blink to protect your eyes. You flinch to avoid danger. But the hiccup? The hiccup appears to do nothing. Nothing at all. So why do you have it? Why does every human being on Earth, and your dog, and your cat, and a horse, spend part of their lives making a noise that serves no purpose?
The answer
is one of the strangest stories in your whole body. Because a hiccup isn't a mistake. It's a fossil. A leftover instruction from a body you stopped having about 370 million years ago. Let's start with what a hiccup actually is, mechanically, because it's stranger than it feels. You think of a hiccup as a sound in your throat. It isn't. It starts much lower and much bigger. Under your lungs, there's a large sheet of muscle called the diaphragm. It's the main engine of your breathing. It pulls down, your lungs fill, it relaxes, you breathe out. Calm, smooth, thousands of times a day without you ever thinking about it. A hiccup is that muscle doing something violent and wrong. Out of nowhere, the diaphragm gives a single hard, sudden contraction, a spasm. It yanks down, and a big gulp of air comes rushing in, far too fast. And here's the part that makes the sound. A fraction of a second later, about 35 thousandths of a second, a little flap at the top of your windpipe, called the glottis, slams shut. Hard. So you have air rushing in at speed, and then a door slammed in its face. The air hits the closed door. Hic. That's the noise. It's not your throat. It's a door slamming on a gust of wind you didn't ask for. Now sit with how odd that is. The contraction pulls air in, as if to help you breathe, and then instantly the glottis shuts the air out, cancelling the breath it just started. The body starts an action and immediately stops itself completing it. It is, mechanically, a breath that gets vetoed halfway. A command and a cancellation, fired a heartbeat apart. Why on earth would a body be wired to do that? To answer that, we have to leave the meeting room, and the century, and, it turns out, the geological era. Here's the first clue. The hiccup is not really controlled by your clever modern brain, the thinking part, the cortex, the bit reading these words. It's run from far deeper down, in the brainstem, one of the oldest structures you own. The brainstem is the ancient management. It handles the things older than thought. Heartbeat, basic breathing, the reflexes you were born already knowing. And the nerve that drives the hiccup runs a truly ridiculous route through your body. It's called the phrenic nerve, and it controls the diaphragm. You'd expect a short, sensible wire from the brain straight to the muscle. Instead, it starts up in your neck, very high, and then travels all the way down through your chest to reach the diaphragm below your lungs. It's a long, looping, badly designed cable, the kind of wiring no engineer would ever draw on purpose. Unless, of course, the diaphragm used to be up in the neck, and the nerve is just still reaching for where its muscle used to live. Which is exactly what happened. But to see it, we have to go back to the animal that was wiring this circuit in the first place. And it wasn't breathing air. Picture a fish. A fish breathes by pulling water in through its mouth and pushing it out over its gills, where the oxygen gets stripped out. In and out over the gills. The key thing is the move. Pull water in, then quickly close off the throat so the water goes out through the gills and not down into the lungs, because a fish does not want water in its lungs. Pull in, snap the throat shut, push out through the gills. Read that again. A sharp intake followed instantly by a snapping shut of the throat. That is a hiccup. That is exactly the hiccup, the same two moves, in the same order, driven by the same ancient part of the nervous system. In a fish, it's not a glitch. It's just how you breathe underwater. Pull the water in, slam the gate so it doesn't drown you. Now wind forward, slowly, across hundreds of millions of years. Some of those fish start living at the edges of shallow, swampy water. The water there is stagnant, low on oxygen, so being able to gulp a mouthful of air at the surface becomes a genuine advantage. The ones who can breathe a little air survive the bad water. So over time, some of these creatures develop early lungs alongside the gills. They live in both worlds. They become eventually the first amphibians, the animals that crawled out of the water and became the ancestors of everything with a backbone on land, including you. But here's what evolution does, and it's the whole secret of your body. It does not redesign from scratch. It never wipes the board clean and starts again. It can only tinker with what's already there, keep the old wiring, and lay the new function on top. So the circuit that once controlled gill breathing didn't get deleted when it stopped being needed. It got repurposed, buried, built over, and quietly kept. The tadpole is the giveaway. A frog begins life as a tadpole, breathing underwater through gills, using that exact ancient in and shut motion. Then it grows lungs and climbs onto land. The wiring never left. It just got covered by newer equipment, the way an old road gets paved over but is still there, under the surface, in the same shape it always was. And that is what fires at random, in your chest, in that meeting. The old road, the fish circuit, a gill breath, 370 million years out of date, running in a body that has no gills to breathe with. Triggered by nothing more than eating too fast, a fizzy drink, a sudden laugh, a change in temperature, some small nudge to a nerve that never forgot its first job. You are not malfunctioning. You are briefly, involuntarily, breathing like a fish. Now, this is the point where I have to be honest with you, because this channel doesn't sell you a tidy story and pretend the science is finished. That fish explanation is beautiful. It's genuinely one of the most elegant ideas in evolutionary biology, and the wiring really does line up. But beautiful and proven are not the same word, and I won't blur them for you. Because there's a second explanation, and it might be the better one. Look at who hiccups the most. Not adults, babies. And not just babies, babies before they're even born. In the womb, a fetus hiccups constantly for long stretches, far more than it ever will again once it's out in the world. Premature babies can spend a striking share of their time hiccuping. Now, if the hiccup were purely a useless fossil, that's odd. Why would it be most powerful, most frequent, at the very start of life, and then fade? So here's the second idea. Think about what a baby has to do that you no longer do. Feed by suckling. And suckling is dangerous. You have to pull milk in, and you must not let it go down into the lungs. You have to pull something in, and then snap the airway shut at exactly the right instant. That's the hiccup movement again. Pull in, close the gate. Maybe the hiccup is how the developing body rehearses that. Before birth, in the safety of the womb, with no milk and no air, practicing the coordination it will need in its very first minutes of life. Training the diaphragm and the airway to fire in the right order, over and over, so that when the milk finally comes, the wiring is ready and the baby doesn't drown in its first meal. Under this idea, the hiccup isn't a fossil at all.
It's a rehearsal.
And honestly, it might be both. The ancient fish wiring could be the reason the circuit exists at all, the old hardware, and the suckling rehearsal could be the reason evolution kept it and switched it on hardest before birth. An old road given a new job. The truthful answer, the one I'd rather give you than a clean lie, is this. We are not completely sure why you hiccup. Two of the best explanations we have both reach back to a version of you that came long before the adult sitting here. One to a fish, one to a newborn. And neither of them has anything to do with the meeting you're currently ruining. Which is why, by the way, none of the folk cures really work. Holding your breath, a fright, a spoon of sugar, drinking upside down, you've tried them. Sometimes one seems to work, but mostly the hiccups just stop when the reflex loop settles on its own. There's a grain of sense in a few of them. A big breath raises the carbon dioxide in your blood, which may quiet the nerve. But there is no reliable off switch. You can't reason with the fish. It isn't listening to the part of you that thinks. So the last question, the one this whole channel keeps arriving at, why hasn't evolution fixed it? Why are we still carrying a gill-breathing reflex around hundreds of millions of years after we left the water? And the answer is almost gentle. Because it costs you nothing. Evolution doesn't remove things for being pointless. It removes things for being expensive, for costing energy or getting you killed. The occasional hiccup does neither. It's mildly annoying once in a while for a few minutes. That is nowhere near enough pressure to be worth the enormous work of rewiring a reflex that sits tangled up with your breathing, right down in the oldest part of your brain. It's easier, it's safer, to just leave it there. So it stays. A harmless souvenir, carried by every human who has ever lived, from an ocean none of us have ever seen. So the next time it happens, in the meeting, at the dinner, in the quiet moment you least wanted it, I want you to think about what it actually is. It isn't a flaw in you. It's the single oldest thing you do. Older than walking, older than speaking, older than your species, your genus, your entire branch of life on land. For a few seconds, something in you remembers the water. Your body is not broken. It's just very, very old.